So, Dr. Chaffee, why do you think carnivore is the optimal way to eat?
Oh, well, I just think it's because that's our biologically appropriate species-specific diet. Like any animal in the wild, they have we have very specific dietary requirements, just like a zebra or giraffe or any other animal would have. And when you don't meet those requirements, you can get very sick, or when you're eating things that you don't have the specific, bioengineering to detoxify and eliminate different sorts of indwelling toxins, you can get very sick from that. So animals in the wild, they eat very, very specific diets, humans included, and we've been eating a very specific diet throughout our origins as humans, and we have diverged from that, especially in the last 50 to 100 years, and we have seen a marked decline in our health during that time. Now, people may say, well, our average life expectancy is actually going up. This means everyone's getting healthier. That's not true. We're actually getting much, much worse. The prevalence of these diseases is getting far worse. And in fact, the life expectancy was an issue before because of infant mortality. That's the issue. And these sort of more primitive cultures, if you want to call them that eat a more hunter-gatherer lifestyle, or really just a hunter lifestyle. They say, well, their life expectancy is really 60 years, like with the Inuit. Well, no, actually, that's because the infant mortality rate is actually very, very high. And when you're out in the Arctic Circle, thousands of miles away from a major university hospital, or any sort of maternity care center, you're not going to be able to get the care that you need if your child is sick or hurt and has all these other sorts of issues that they can run into in those extreme circumstances. And so kids die, unfortunately. And that's one of the ways that we've increased our life expectancy. But those people in those situations, when dying of old age, actually go way longer than we do in a lot of cases. And so, in some cases far longer, to the point that people don't believe them. You have some, 102-year-old lady in the Nanette tribe that are still herding caribou and out there, working 14-hour days in the snow in the tundra. And she's like, yeah, I'm 102. And they're like, bullshit. That can't be true. She looks like she's 60. Well, she looks like she's 60 because metabolically she is. And she's as healthy or more healthy than 60-year-old people in America or the UK. And that's simply because she's more metabolically healthy. But we know as geneticists, we're supposed to live 120 years on average, meaning that if you just stay out of your own way and don't mess up, you should make it to 120 years without doing anything special. So why are we dying in our 60s and 70s? Why is a life expectancy of 78? Oh, that's really good. That's good. No, that's horrible. That's middle-aged, right? And so these people are actually living that long. And if you eat the way you're supposed to eat, you can do that as well and be healthy as you're doing it.
Is fatty meat good?
I was going to say, for those that don't really understand why maybe adding fat, there is an added bonus to fat, and that's the production of bile. If you keep your bile production up, believe it or not, that's not just helping absorb fat. That is definitely helping to absorb amino acids. So some people are a little unsure about why we're saying fatty meat sometimes, because it's so ingrained that you've got to avoid fat, and all you're going to do is you're not going to gain muscle. You're just going to get fatter, and that's not the case. Unless you eat way too much fat and you go beyond your satiety, which is really tough. That's the other thing. It's very tough to overeat when it comes to fat. It's not like carbohydrates. I think the Minnesota prison study, which pretty much proved that you can overeat by carbohydrates, that was an experiment with humans, a captive audience, no pun intended, where they could eat, half of the prison could eat as much as they like with carbohydrates, and the other half could eat fats and proteins. And I think the fats and proteins group, they overate the sort of estimated calorie intake for a day by about 800, but the carbohydrate group, it was about 10 times as much. So it's much easier to overeat on carbs. So don't fear the fat. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's also very difficult to absorb it as well. If you eat a lot more, you do need that bile to absorb the fat. You can still absorb some, but it's not as much. It's a very small percentage, anywhere from like 10 to 15% of the fat past the bile that you can absorb. So you can absorb that. You can absorb if your body it runs out of bile. I mean, that's how much fat your body wants, right? So that's how much bile it's made for. And then after that, you can still absorb some. Usually, like medium chain fatty acids are a bit easier for your body to absorb without bile. But It's not that much. And so you really have to overdo it. And first of all, it's not going to taste good. You're going to be sort of fighting yourself. And then you're also going to get 85 to 90% of that fat being excreted, which is going to give you explosive diarrhea, and that's not going to be fun. And so you're going to want to like just naturally pull back on that. You can do it, but it's difficult. It's easier to eat more protein, things like that, the lean sort of stuff. But you sort of have a limit on the amount of fat you can absorb as well. But you can certainly overeat on pretty much anything. It's just much more difficult to do on a carnivore diet because first and foremost, it just starts tasting bad. And it's just stop enjoying it. And so you want to stop. Whereas with carbs, you get in that carb cycle where, oh my God, I'm hungry. I have to eat. And you eat and you're hungry an hour later because now your blood sugar's dropped and you can't stimulate lipolysis or proteolysis because your insulin's up, right? So that's very easy to overeat as well. And so that's what works for me. That's when I decided that plants were toxic, and my professor said, plants are trying to kill you. I'm like, right, I'm out, and I'm just not going to eat any plants after that. That works for me, and that works for a lot of people. I find that a lot of people, when they get that idea in their head and they want to do it, like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. It's really, really beneficial if they just do it right then. As sales people will tell you, like a car salesman, someone comes on the lot and they're looking at a car and they're sort of interested in something. If they say, well, I'll think about it and I'll come back, 95% of the time they do not come back. And so you really need to get on board. When your mind is like, ooh, do I want to do this? You need to do it, because most often that's when you'll have success. Now, there are some people that are they're not like, oh, I want to do this. They're like, oh God, I don't know. I mean, I want to, but obviously that's someone coming at a different place. So like, okay, why don't we ratchet things down and sort of, and sort of ease our way into that. Maria Emmerich said that herself when she sort of came around this. She came to keto first, and was keto for a very long time, and is really mostly carnivore now, but she, has some sort of plant stuff here and there, but it's predominantly animal based. She was saying that the type of person she was, if she's just said, yeah, you can only eat meat, she'd be like, absolutely not. That doesn't give me the options. I'm not going to be able to cook. I'm not going to be able to use any ingredients. Like, not going to do it. And so you'll meet people like that. I meet people in a special circumstance. People come to me when they want to do this, and they want some help and advice to get on this, or they're sick and they have a lot of health issues. Those are highly motivated people, because they are in a tight spot, and I can say, look, I think this will help you. They go, okay, look, whatever you suggest, I'm just going to do it. And so I find that those people have a really good success of really just going, hammering it home, going full on. You see this also in smoking cessation and other sorts of drugs and alcohol. People do have a better time going cold turkey and not easing off. You have those people that, I've been cutting down smoking, I'm trying to quit, and they're trying to quit for 20 years, and then they're smoking more than they were before. And people go on methadone to help them try and quit heroin, and 20 years later they're on a higher dose of methadone and still doing heroin. So it's like, if you just go cold at some point, even if you wean down, eventually you will have to stop, right? And so why can't that just be today, right? So I find that works well. And if someone does decide that that's what they want to do, then I think you go all in. You toss out all the food in your house if you can. If you're have that luxury. Sometimes people are living with people that have no interest in following their footsteps. But if you're in the position that you're on your own, or your family is behind you and willing to do this with you, just throw it all out. Throw the food out of the pantry, throw the stuff out of the fridge, give it to someone that you don't like and want them to eat, or whatever you want to do. You can give it to them, you can get rid of it, and you don't need it in the house. If you're going to try to quit smoking or quit drinking, you don't just leave a bunch of cigarettes and booze around the house. For two reasons. One, you want that out of there. You don't want the temptation, out of sight, out of mind. And also number two, if you're keeping it, well, I spent money on that, I don't want to throw it away. And the next part of that sentence that you don't say is, when I decide to go back to smoking or drinking, right? So you've already decided that you're going to go back to this. You've already set yourself up for failure. So you get rid of it, throw all that crap out. When the people go, well, I just bought a whole bunch of groceries and I'll use those up and then I'll do it. They never do it. Again, that's that 5% of people that actually come back to the car dealership. So it's much better to strike while the iron is hot. No, if you've said, okay, this is what I want to do, you are never going to be more committed to that and then that moment right then. So you need to put yourself into a position that you can have as much success as possible. If you are going to say, okay, well, I'm going to ease my way into this, that's what's going to work better for me, fine, but you need to have that in a graduated manner. You need to get a calendar and mark a day. Today, I'm cutting out all carbs, grains, sugars, alcohol, all of them. The next week you put in X, I'm cutting out all seeds, legumes, and oxalate, high oxalate foods. The next week, you're cutting out something else. And by, week 3, week 4, it's like absolutely no plants, nothing but meat after this day. All right. And you need those hard checkpoints. Oh, sometime next week I'll stop. The diet starts tomorrow. The diet starts Monday. That's it's the cliche sort of thing. It's always tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'll love you tomorrow, right? It's only a day away, but it never comes, it's only today. So you need to mark on your calendar when that's going to happen, and you need to action it. And you're only hurting yourself. It's yourself that you have to hold yourself. You hold yourself accountable to yourself. Sometimes it's easier to be held accountable by other people. Like, well, I don't want to let this person down. Sometimes that's easier. So sometimes you can do it with, your spouse or, a boyfriend, girlfriend, your kids. Just be like, hey, why don't we do this together? And then you keep each other strong. Hey, let's not eat that. Oh, let's do this. So how about we, instead of doing that, let's go to the gym together. Let's go on a walk, or let's, get a steak or something like that. So you can have that support as well. But I personally like the cold turkey, just get after it method.
So, I just wanted to add a little bit that I tell all my clients is other ways of eating tend to be very negative, like don't eat this, don't eat that, don't do this. When you come over to Carnivore, I think it's better for your subconscious mind. One of the things is to be positive. Don't wake up going, I'm not going to have ice cream today. Wake up saying, today I'm going to eat some protein, today I'm going to have some fat, today I'm going to be carnivore. And if you think in a positive frame of mind, and I know it's corny, but if you tell your brain not to think about pink elephants, you have to think about pink elephants to do it. So it's a little tip there is just to sort of be very positive and think in a more positive way. So today I'm going to have beef, today I'm going to have bacon, eggs, butter. That's going to be a great day. And I just think that can help people. And what you said about friends and family, I've actually dealt with 2 people who are having big arguments with their partner, and if you're wanting to eat this way, and sadly, one of them actually is refusing to buy the food. So they become quite individual when it comes to the food. And my advice was just stick at it. You will become the example. And it's very tough to say to somebody in 6 weeks or 6 months, hey, you've lost a ton of weight, you're off your meds, please don't eat like this. Because if that person truly wants to be with you, they're going to love that. So if you don't mind, I'll just do a couple of the pre-submitted questions because people have been kind enough to do that, and we've got tons in the comments. I am trying to get to them all, but these answers are brilliant. So here's a nice easy one. This is from Roxana. Do you feel that dairy puts weight on?
It can, yeah. I mean, especially like milk and things like that, where you're going to have enough lactose to raise your insulin. It's going to put you into a fat storage metabolism as opposed to a fat burning metabolism. And some people have an inflammatory, everyone's going to have a bit of an inflammatory response to casein, especially A1 casein proteins. And some people have a very large inflammatory reaction to that. You're going to retain water weight, and it's going to sort of mess you up in other ways, especially if you have autoimmune issues. But regardless of all that, this is just something that we see. We see a lot of people stall when they're using dairy. So, people get it. You hear the carnivore diet, and you're just eating meat and drinking water, and like dairy, it's a bit of a gray area. You can have some of it as a condiment, put like a slice of cheese on a burger patty or something like that. But really, what you're eating, you're supposed to be eating meat. They hear that, oh, great, I can eat dairy. And they just eat like just an absolute ton of dairy. And then they're just always like, oh, I'm not really losing weight. In fact, I'm like putting on weight. I lost like 20 pounds at first, and now I put on like, 15 pounds. Like, well, what the hell's going on? You ask them what they're eating, and you're just eating just piles of dairy. Our body chases nutrients, doesn't chase calories, and so you need different nutrients from meat. Dairy is not a complete nutrition source. And so, especially like pasteurized sort of things. And so, your body's still going to need like the different nutrients from meat. And then you're going to be eating meat. A lot of people eat basically the same amount of meat that they do without the dairy, but they're also eating the dairy. And so you're just getting more than you need. And it goes back to that sort of difficult to overeat, but you can do it sort of part of this equation. And that's what I've noticed. A lot of people, when they're stalling, they're either still using artificial sweeteners or dairy, or maybe both. And, some of those every now and then, your body can work through it, but it is something your body has to work through. And so, I do find that people have difficulty with dairy and can definitely put on weight, or and not good weight. You're not putting on muscle mass. People will put on a bit more fat, or find it more difficult to lose fat. There are other things in the equation too, though. When people are working out, lifting weights, especially guys that get really into the gym because they feel so much better, and they're just lifting weights 4 days a week, and they're like, "Oh, I'm stalling. I'm not really losing weight." Well, that's because you're putting on muscle, and the muscle is offsetting the fat that you're losing. So just because you're not losing as much weight as you want, it may not be because you're not losing fat. It may be because you're putting on muscle as well. But definitely something to keep in mind. You can definitely eat, you can definitely run into problems eating too much dairy. Absolutely. And too much being more than a very little bit. It's like more than a condiment. If you have a cheese platter and you're just eating chunks of cheese, too much. If you're drinking, multiple glasses of milk a day, too much. And so you just, as a condiment to meat, you shouldn't have dairy on its own. As a friend, Dr. Bill Schindler, talked about, and he's a professor of paleoanthropology and archaeology, and he studies this sort of stuff, and he was saying that when babies are drinking breast milk, it goes into their stomach and actually curdles and actually turns into cheese, and then they sort of break that down and eat it. So that's sort of that same process, when you're adding sort of different sort of chemicals to basically turn milk into cheese. That's sort of what you're doing. And then you're eating that. It's much more bioavailable. It's much better for you. Babies are different than adults, obviously, but I definitely put those in two different categories. The fermented dairies are going to be fermented anythings are going to be better than the non-fermented anything. So except for maybe meat, I don't think you need to go rotting your meat and doing the high meat thing. Teach their own. You want to do that, that's fine. Maybe like just the bee's knees, but I'm okay. I'm good where I'm at. I'm feeling great. I don't think I need to do that. But with the fermented dairy, that can be very different. And and the bacteria and things like that will eat up the lactose, or at least a lot of the lactose. And so if you're doing that in a traditional manner, it's very different. The Mongols traditionally would drink fermented mare's milk or use fermented mare's milk products, and you would think that because they use a lot of cow dairy, horse dairy, and then we just eat meat as well and drink the blood, that they probably be pretty used to lactose and things like that. No, they are not. They are some of the most lactose intolerant populations in the world. Almost all of them are lactose intolerant, if not all of them. And so it's because it's all fermented. They do not come across lactose. It's always fermented. And they've been doing that for a very, very long time. Now, is that the best thing that they could ever do? I don't think so. I think if you're able to get enough fatty meat, then that's obviously the ideal. But I do think that fermented dairy is definitely in a different category than unfermented, and like milk and things like that.
So Peter's put 6 weeks on strict carnivore, suddenly inflammation markers right up and blood's low, RBC, etc. Thoughts? Great question. Probably would need a little bit more information there on inflammation markers. How long have you been not eating carnivore? Because 6 weeks, you're going to see some changes. But anyway, that's for Dr. Chaffee. Any thoughts?
Well, also which inflammatory markers, because there's some that are, high sensitivity, CRP, and that goes up. Okay, well that's high sensitivity is right in the name. But there's other inflammatory markers, such as platelets or your ferritin levels and different sorts of things that you can look at, and that can be indicative of increased inflammation. There's nothing on carnivore that's going to increase your inflammation, but there are other things that maybe it can increase, and we would generally associate them with increased inflammation that are not increased inflammation. If your high sensitivity CRP is going up, Okay, maybe you need to look around at what you're doing and what you're putting in your body. Are you using seed oils? Are you cooking your steak in olive oil? Are you have you gotten rid of stevia and erythritol and monk fruit sugar and things like that? Those sorts of things matter. And they will cause a problem. So there's nothing in meat that will increase your nothing in meat that will increase your inflammation inherently. So if your inflammatory markers are indeed going up, then there's something else going on, and you need to identify that and eliminate that. Now, it could be as simple as you respond very poorly to the linoleic acid in pork. All these things, just fed on just soy and processed oils and things like that as well, and that gets into their fat, and then we eat them and we eat that fat and we get that seed oil direct from the animal, right? So that's a problem as well. That's why some people have a serious reaction to pork, chicken, and certainly farmed fish, dairy, and eggs. Because the animals are being fed things that they shouldn't be fed, and so you can and omega-6s are quite pro-inflammatory. And so if you are eating a lot of those high linoleic acid meats because they're being fed garbage, then that can do that. It would be weird that you'd go from like a standard, if we just assume you're on a standard American diet, which is very pro-inflammatory, and you cut off all that crap and all you're having now is a bit of linoleic acid that's in pork. It still should be a disparity. It should be still going in the right direction. So I would think that there's need more information. And I would wonder if you're not being perfectly strict. Exactly what markers are we talking about? Exactly when did you get them checked? When do you check them again? Also, how did you get your blood test done? This changes. Your blood test will change. If you get your bloods taken 5 times over the course of the day, your bloods are going to be different 5 times during the day, except for like your RBCs and hemoglobin and things like that. That'll remain pretty consistent. But a lot of your inflammatory markers can change. Your cholesterol can certainly change. Your hormones will definitely change, and a lot of other things as well, even your minerals. And so what I tell my patients is that you need to take your blood test in a very consistent manner. You have to take it in the morning between 8 and 9 a.m. You have to be fasting from 9 p.m. the night before, only drinking water after that. You drink 2 glasses of water right when you wake up, at least an hour or 2 before you get your blood test. No more than 4 glasses of water, in that time as well. So you want the same fasting status, the same time of day, the same hydration status, and you want to be resting for a day or 2 before that. So for the day of the test and the day before the test, and maybe even the day before that, you should not be working out, not going to the gym, not going on a run, not having sex. All of these things will affect your blood results. And so you just need to keep a consistent pattern to all of this, and you will get more consistent results that you can test. And at the end of the day, a test is only as good as a retest. So you have some weird markers on your blood test now. Okay, keep doing what you're doing. See how you feel. If you're feeling good, great. In a few weeks' time, get another blood test and see where you're at, and see if you need to make an adjustment. And if you are eating anything except meat, red meat and water, go to red meat and water and see what that does for you.
I think with the phlebotomy hat on, as I'm a qualified phlebotomist, I've seen thousands of bloods, and when you go carnivore, some things do go up anyway, like the blood urea nitrogen, because you're eating more protein. So you'll get a red flag for your buns reading, because you're just basically producing more nitrogen waste from the protein synthesis. And there are other things as well. When you've got a reference range, that is a normative range. It doesn't mean it's optimal. For instance, Anthony just mentioned the high sensitivity CRP. The range is very minimal, and you need some context here, because I've had people really panicked because their CRP is 5, where I've seen CRPs of 80 and also hundreds and even thousands. So you've got to understand that they're very dynamic, as Anthony just said, but there's also a lot of nuance to it. And I think the hydration status and also tests for kidney function tests, the cystatin C is a much better test than the estimated glomerular filtration rate, for instance. So there's lots of things you can do with your bloods, but it's probably better to get someone who understands bloods in the context of low carb, keto, or carnivore, because there is some nuance to that as well, which I think is underestimated.
I was just going to say as well, if your inflammatory markers are up, sure, fine. Okay, we covered that. But then blood's being low, like your RBCs are going down. So if your RBCs have gone down in 6 weeks, that's not from carnivore. Like you could be bleeding somewhere, or having like, or having, if you have the MTHFR gene, that's you're not going to process folate, as well. You could, get some form of anemia from that. Check your folate, right?
Yeah,
And
presentation of symptoms there, Anthony, as well. You said about being anemic. If you're looking at yourself and you've perfect blood, but don't think the bloods are telling you the story, because always question how you're feeling. I mean, presentation of symptoms actually is a big deal for, when I was doing bloods ever such a lot, people would say I've got low folate, and then you'd look at, well, is there any clinical presentation here?
Yeah.
Next question.
What is your experience and guidance for a post-RNY gastric bypass patient that's carnivore? I'm 54, postmenopausal, carnivore 1.5 years, 25 years plus post-op. Starting weight was 460. Wow, well done. And current is 165. Yeah, that's brilliant. Sorry, I was reading ahead, guys. When I went, wow, I mean, that's a ton of weight at 5'8". It's very hard to get nutrients in unless you eat 3 to 5 times a day. Does that tank blood sugar and fat burning? Great question, Andrea.
Well, and sorry, this is in the context of gastric bypass sort of thing.
Yeah. I think because when you've had bypass, your stomach volume is smaller.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure I heard that right. So, so that's fine. Eat 5 times a day. That's fine. If you're eating meat, then that's okay. That's not a problem. You're going to need to do that, right? Because you're going to need to eat a different amount of meat than your body's going to allow you to do by sheer, lack of volume available. Another thing you can do is don't drink water during the meal or 2 hours before the meal. You want every square inch of space in there to be for food. And for fatty meat in particular, focus on fatty meat. That's going to have more nutrients per area of volume, right? So no water during or before the meal. So your stomach is empty, and then you just fill it up with fatty meat, right? Let your body digest. You get on with your day, and then you do it again, and you may have to do that a few times, and that's okay. You still need to get enough food. You still need, it would have been nice if we could have gotten to you before you had the surgery, because you would have had very good results with that as well. And I think just as good, if not better, with that, and then you would be able to eat to satiety and not have to worry about it. But you're in the position you are now, and that's okay. You just eat when you're hungry until you're full. And if you have to eat more than once a day, that's fine, as long as you're eating the correct thing, which is meat.
Hi, or is hint water okay to drink on carnivore diet? Is that something in America? I've not heard of hint.
I don't know if that's a brand, maybe that's a typo. Hint water. I don't know if that's a brand. I haven't heard of it. If it's not a brand, I still haven't heard of it. So I haven't heard of it. But yes, water is fine to drink on carnivore.
Yeah, there's a good hint. There you go.
Yeah. But yeah, just normal water. I mean, you shouldn't have anything sort of flavorings or any sort of crap like that. It should just, if there's a bottle and has an ingredients list, it should say water, right? And and so that's pretty much it. Filtered water, I think, is best. There's a whole bunch of garbage that's in city water, and you do want to filter that out. Charcoal filters get most stuff out. Does not going to get everything out. Some people do the reverse osmosis one. That's fine. The distillation ones actually work just as well, and are much cheaper. So, but the reverse osmosis ones are getting cheaper and cheaper as they go as well. But at least some sort of filter. Unless you're out in the country and you're just drinking, branch water, go for it. That's the best you can do, really, as long as it's not contaminated with some sort of filth, atrazine, all that sort of weird things that like change the sex of frogs and things like that. Like, no, thank you.